Wow. Wow. What did we just watch? Was that real? Man, oh man. All right, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back into the Celtics Talk Weekly post-game show. I'm your host, Rob Haytayan. Joined with me is my co-host, Seamus Zarlingo, and a very special guest, Griffin Aldrich. You might know him from the Celtics Nation Rise podcast. Griffin will be joining us tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. Guys, tonight, the Boston Celtics put on a rather unusual performance at home at the TD Garden. No Jason Tatum, no Drew Holiday, no Kristaps Porzingis. No problem for the Boston Celtics. 128-118 was your final score. Guys, let's kick it right off the bat. And this is going to be a little unusual here, but how about this tonight, guys? For the first time in Celtics history, the Boston Celtics had two players score over 40 points, and their names are not Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum. But how about Payton Pritchard and Derrick White? Guys, tonight it feels like the initial thoughts might be surrounded around two certain somebodies, and I cannot wait to hear what you guys have to say.
My goodness. Go ahead, Griffin. Welcome to the program.
Yeah. I just want to start off because, I'm so excited for this moment. It's one that you don't ever see. You would... Rob, you already said it. You think about that. 2 40-point performances in the same night, and it's not Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. And Jaylen Brown played tonight, and he only had 18 points. And it's how is Jaylen Brown still playing, and Derrick White and Payton Pritchard both had 40? It's surreal. It's incredible. And sorry, I was just so hyped watching the game, and I just, sorry to cut you off. I just so excited for that. That's incredible.
No, the fact of the matter is what we saw tonight was Celtics history. I mean, two players putting up 40 points in the same exact game, and it really exemplifies how much talent resides on this particular Celtic team, because the other night, we almost saw this the other night against the Cleveland Cavaliers. Jason Tatum put up 46 points. Jaylen Brown put up 37. And then just a few nights later, it's Payton Pritchard putting up over 40 points, 43 to be exact, and Derrick White coming away with 41. How crazy is that? That is just outrageous. We think about Brown and Tatum, how good they are, and how many points they can rack up on any given night. Yet the Celtics have two guards, one coming off the bench in Payton Pritchard, who can also go out there and score 40. And those aren't the only players on the Boston Celtics we think about when we think about 40 points. Kristaps Porzingis is another player who on any given night could go out and get you a 40-point game. And Drew Holiday, he's had 40-point games as an all-star in the past too. So looking at this entire Celtic roster, tonight's game really exemplified how much talent resides on the Celtic roster in total. And Payton Pritchard did it against his hometown team. There's definitely some extra motivation there. Seems like every time the Celtics go up against the Blazers, Payton Pritchard holds some extra motivation. But outside of Payton Pritchard, Derrick White, both of those guards, I mean, we think about the guard matchup too. On the other team, we think about Anthony Simons and Shaedon Sharpe and even Scoot Henderson coming off the bench for the Portland Trailblazers. Those are all supposed to be quality young guards in the NBA, still trying to prove themselves, of course, that is, but they're still quality young guards in the NBA, and yet the Celtics, they have the better guards tonight in Derrick White and Payton Pritchard, especially when that rotation is a little bit thin. Those two guys put up NBA history, and the Celtics felt like this was never a game that was really in doubt, although, as we'll see in the lead tracker, there were some moments in there for the Boston Celtics that didn't look all that pretty, but the second half, the sea of green returned.
You guys summarized it perfectly. First of all, on the first sphere of it, right, it was a special thing to watch. I mean, it was fun. I mean, it was really, I was sitting there on my couch watching this game, just enjoying what I was watching, right? I wasn't really too locked into the X's and O's tonight. It was more so, let me sit back and just watch and enjoy this, the what is going on. Because again, this is the first time in Celtic history this has happened. This hasn't happened, guys. Forget Celtic history. This doesn't happen often, right? We we'll talk about a certain other time this has happened before a little bit later on, but this isn't normal to have two guys score 40 points in the same night. Even if they're your two best players, is ridiculous. To have one come off the bench and score 40 and have the other one be your fourth option, that is special. Seamus, I agree. This shows how deep this Celtics team is. When you hear guys say, I don't know if Cleveland has what it takes to beat Boston in 7 games. I don't know if Denver has the artillery to beat Boston in 7 games. This is exactly what they're alluding to. This is what we are talking about. We have 5 legitimate guys who can now officially, because Payton Pritchard and Derrick White have entered that conversation, can go out and get you 40 any given night. They were flamethrowers. They weren't missing. And I got to give a lot of props to Payton Pritchard and Derrick White, because in moments of the game where the Celtics were up big, they did not try to take over. They did not try to make it the Payton Pritchard, Derrick White show. They continued to play the Celtic brand of basketball that they needed to in order to make a win. Yes, Portland closed the gap towards the end, but Boston shut the door really quick. They did what they needed to do. They got the stop towards the end of the game that they needed to get in order for this to be a win. So very, very impressive. Seamus, you mentioned it. Let's hop right into the lead tracker. And you talk about the sea of green, and it's like the exact moment Payton Pritchard and Derrick White take over. I mean, this is the definition of what a sea of green looks like. Guys, tonight, 25 points, the largest lead for the Boston Celtics. Despite trailing by 6 points there, halfway through that second quarter, you see there Portland, biggest lead of the night being 6 guys. Boston and Portland found themselves 15 times this lead changed. So this was a relatively back and forth close game there through really 2 quarters, almost 2.5 quarters. And then eventually Boston just ran away with it. This is an untraditional game tracker. The sea of green was back half of it, guys. But again, this is a lead tracker that's been a little up and down over the past 5 games. So what did you like tonight from Boston? Obviously, Payton Pritchard and Derrick White, they helped. But, what did you like specifically in that second half when that sea of green really took over?
Could I say this is going to be a random one, but I want to say Jordan Walsh. One thing that impressed me is kind of just, I know this is kind of off-topic name, but Jordan Walsh just kind of impressed me in his efforts, and I think like having him out there kind of to fill the role of Tatum in that sea of green in that second half, he was just aggressive, and I wrote this down in my notes too. He would grab rebounds and he would just fight for them, and I love that. Just coming from a player who, when I played in the paint, that's a big thing for me, is how aggressive you are on getting rebounds, and that's what Jordan Walsh was tonight. Obviously, he didn't have a ton, but he still was aggressive, and I loved his just effect on the boards. And he's kind of a player where with that second half, obviously, like you guys said, it was Derrick White and Payton Pritchard tonight, but that's just kind of a player that really stood out to me that honestly doesn't get a lot of credit because he obviously still young and still a bench player.
Well, ultimately, during the second half tonight, I think what was the most impressive thing from the Boston Celtics, and really, I wouldn't even say just the second half, it really was the entirety of the game, is they kept the lead growing. And yes, it dwindled there a little bit in the fourth quarter, but by that time, it was kind of like we were playing with our food a little bit. And that was a portion of the game where I would actually expect us to maybe relinquish a little bit of the lead, because all of a sudden the crowd's getting up, guys are starting to go a little bit away from the game plan and just kind of play hero ball in a certain sense. At that point in the game, we were trying to get extra points for Payton Pritchard and Derrick White there, and they were getting all their points on their own tonight, but especially at the end, you feed the hot hand. But the Celtics, what was one of the more impressive things is they kept the lead growing quarter after quarter in this game, because we've seen games in the past, particularly the past weekend, it was the Nuggets game and the Cleveland Cavaliers games. Those games, the Celtics had and held big leads in at certain points of time. And it felt like at the end of the quarters, each quarter, it would always kind of read, oh, Celtics won by 3, or oh, Celtics won by 1. When in that quarter, we held a 17-point lead, say in the third quarter against the Cleveland Cavaliers. We held a substantial lead against the Denver Nuggets at a certain point in time, yet we would finish off quarters, and instead of us saying, oh, we won by 10 or we won by 12, and we actually went ahead and obliterated the Nuggets or the Cavaliers in those quarters. Instead, we just won by the margins. It was by the margins, and then eventually, we either lost the Cavaliers game or just won the Nuggets game by 7. Tonight, it felt much different where it did go back and forth there. But if you look at all the line scores, you look at the end of the first quarter, halftime, the end of the third quarter in particular, that lead kept growing for the Celtics, and the Celtics were actually able to finish out quarters well and go into either halftime or the quarterly breaks with a comfortable lead. I thought the other two games this weekend, which were a little tougher matchups, so you look at the opponents, the Cavaliers and the Nuggets, definitely a little bit tougher than the Blazers, although the Blazers have been mighty good as of late. The Celtics, this game, it felt like they could go into the breaks. They went to the breaks strong, and they went to the breaks with more cushion behind themselves. And I thought that's actually what helped the team tremendously throughout portions of this game tonight, even though you see in that lead tracker. It went back and forth, specifically in that first half. But by the second half, the Celtics just absolutely put it on the Blazers. And then they end up having time for both rest and time for just Geno time, hero ball all over the place for everybody on the end of the bench. So that was definitely fun at the end.
I'll tell you what, I was impressed. This Portland team really isn't 28 and 35 bad. They impressed me tonight, especially in that first half, and even in that fourth quarter. I agree with what both of you said again. And Seamus, was something you said. Boston kind of likes to play. Sometimes they have a tendency to play within the margins when you're up by, 13, 14, 15, right? And tonight, they were able to extend that lead. And in today's NBA, a 15-point lead is really like a 2005, 7-point lead, right? It really is with the amount of sheer volume, that these teams of three-pointers these teams can take and make. 15 really is not a substantial, comfortable lead in today's NBA. And I think Boston has fallen a little victim to that recently, and they've been playing within the margins and leaving that door open for a potential, 8-0 run makes a 15-point game, a 7-point game, and that an 8-0 run can happen in the NBA now in 30 seconds. I mean, it's just like that, how fast those leads can go away. And tonight, I agree, they did a great job. And then Jordan Walsh, I'm happy you brought him up tonight, Griffin, because Jordan Walsh is a player that we have been talking about, feels like a little bit more recently on this program, and it's really dating back to that Cleveland game